Hello, and welcome back to our podcast with me, Mark, and my bro, Steve here. Today we're going to be talking about various different subjects. I'm going to start off with just a roundup of things which have caught my eye this week. So, the first item I sort of noticed in the media, which was reasonably well noted in the UK, was some financial deplatforming, which has been happening with some podcasters and some political parties as well, where they've actually had their bank accounts stopped by various online banks, I think they are, rather than the traditional walk-in high street banks. One of these podcasters was a website called Trigonometry, and I mention them because they have actually been on various different news channels and other podcasters saying what happened to them. It is only suspected this is what happens. It could be just an oversight on the bank's part, but it does seem to be happening quite a lot. So that's the first item that just caught my eye. The next one is, and it's a rather interesting one, is there's a call for AI to be regulated before it destroys humans. Yeah, I mean, any of us that grew up in the 70s and 80s have seen the films, everything from Terminator to Demon Seed, which is probably not so well known, and one called Odyssey from 1970, about computers that managed to, if you like, outthink their creators and want to take over and understand us better to destroy us. It's probably not going to be like that. One person who has spoken about this is a little known guy called Elon Musk. He has his concerns. Remember, he is a developer of AI as well for various different applications. I mean, he has spoken about probably the thing that drive it, unfortunately, might be it will be used for super weapons in a battleground scenario where you're going to have weapons which can think faster and be more destructive than humans can be. You can probably get closer to situations. Whether or not it's true or not remains to be seen. Possibly if computers do destroy us, it will be quite by accident. They'll see something that's not quite right and decide, oh, I'm going to put this right, to the detriment of us. Even if you try and program an AI not to be offensive to human beings. Anyone that's played around with ChatGPT will know that that is inbuilt in it. Another problem with AI that I have picked up in the news is that it's suspected that when you're using ChatGPT and other GPT applications, that they might be biased in certain ways. In fact, Fox News and a couple of other news outlets have already cited, I think there's done some research into this and found there might be some substance behind this claim. Okay. The next item I saw was they've done the 70,000 scans of the Titanic, obviously off Newfoundland, and they've created a 3D digital record of what's there now, of all the debris and the ship itself, or the two parts of it. It's being done. It is deteriorating. It might not be there for many more generations to come. So it's actually quite a good record of what's there now. I mean, obviously, remember the film Titanic, which was interesting, if not always correctly, if not always historically correct. Still a good film, in some ways. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to look at if you just want to have a look on the internet. I've seen some interesting pictures. A bit ghostly in some ways, and remembering that it is actually still effectively a graveyard. And another couple of items I've seen: the remains of young workers from a North Yorkshire churchyard have been investigated by forensic or historical forensic scientists. These are the remains of young people aged 8 to 20. They give an insight into life in the 18th, 19th centuries, when some orphans were taken from London up to York as cheap labour in the factories. Effectively, I think we could call that slave labour, just barely kept alive, probably. From the bones, the remains have been able to tell the diet they had, their general state of health. It doesn't paint a pretty picture. So anyone that sort of says, you know, Victorian times and before, the good days, yeah, isn't quite seeing the full picture. So when we watch historical films on Netflix and think it was wonderful, tranquil times, there is always going to be a dark underbelly to all this. Very, very interesting, though. As a supernova has been found just off within the galaxy M101, which is only 21 million light years away. So it happened sometime in the past, 21 million years ago. Again, you can see it if you have a telescope. If you find what we call the Big Dipper, or the Great Bear in England, off the handle of the Big Dipper on it, you can actually see the galaxy, and you can actually just about pick out the supernova, apparently. I don't have a telescope. I like astronomy, but I don't have a telescope. I've only got a pair of binoculars, so I can't actually see it. You have to invest in some quite hardcore equipment to actually see it, I imagine. Yes. And one last item that picked my got my attention was, and quite important to me, the most recent Indiana Jones movie or film, if you're English, has had bad reviews from its showing in Cannes for various different reasons. They've had to shoot the thing about 3 times over. It's cost Disney a lot of money to do. I believe the producer behind it all, a woman called Kathleen Kennedy, has been told by Bob Iger of Disney that it really has to make some money for Disney. Otherwise, she might be in a little bit of hot water. Yes, she's already had another embarrassment, well, in the last week, in that a Star Wars hotel, she oversaw opening. It is now closing in September. So effectively only been open for just over a year. Cost Disney a few quid to do. A lot of fans are complaining that it doesn't sort of go into the legacy of Star Wars. It's only got the characters that have been there since she effectively took over, and she's more or less tried to airbrush or paint out the original Star Wars for the 1970s, which a lot of us still regard as probably the real Star Wars, the thing that started it all. Okay, anyone can make a judgment about that. That's not to say the most recent films were bad. It's just Star Wars has started to make some losses, and I don't think anyone could have seen that one coming for whatever reasons. Okay, well, there's my take on the world. I'll hand over to my bro Steve.
Hi people. Right, so let's look at your selection one by one. You may have to remind me in the order of which they arrive. I remember the first one being about trigonometry.
Yes.
So I did a little bit of research about trigonometry, and actually what they have is an account. What they had was an account with a company called Tide. Tide is not a bank. What Tide is a financial organizer. And so when you open your account with Tide, Tide opens an online bank account with a company called ClearBank. But it was Tide that cancelled out Trigonometry's account. So it isn't clear still if Tide closed the account at ClearBank as they are basically the go-to people to open the ClearBank account. I don't know if they have the power to close the account as well. But in terms of it's like there being a bridge between the client, the end user, Trigonometry, and ClearBank. And Tide, they sort of organize their financials as payments each month and things like that. Okay, so I'm always skeptical about online banks because you don't know who these people are. They spring up. My youngest son, he has an account with an online bank called Newbank, but I just don't know who these people are. I don't know who. When you buy something on the internet, you're acting in good faith. And if you were unscrupulous and you opened up a company on the internet that involves receiving a lot of people's money, you could just receive it all and abscond, and nobody knows where you are, who you are. You know, they don't even know if your identity as a physical person is who you say it is. You know, it's like a stranger coming up to you in the street and saying, "Give me £1,000, and in a month I'll give you £1,200." And you say, "Yeah, sure, take that," and you just don't know who they are. Yeah. So these online bank, I'm a bricks and mortar guy, because if they close down or collapse, at least you know the sale of the building would get something to come back into your pocket. The next thing you was on about was
AI,
what?
artificial
AI.
intelligence.
Yes. Elon Musk. Tesla is not a car company.
Mm.
It's an artificial intelligence company, development company. I say, you know. And I was watching a report about proteins, human proteins. There are we have a lot of different types of proteins, and the AI programs can work out how these proteins work in the space of like a minute.
Mm.
And there are people who were studying proteins in biology to be a sort of boffin in biology, and they passed 4 years studying just one protein.
Mm.
The AI can do it in a matter of minutes. And so if you give them a loads of proteins, different proteins, they'll do it in the space of, you know, you have like 1,000 years of work for humans to discover how each protein works. The AI can do it in like a day or two. You know, and the other thing about the AI is that it doesn't have any compassion.
Mm.
So a rule is a rule is a rule is a rule.
Yeah.
There's no grey areas, which humans tend to have this grey area. If you explain to a judge who is about to sentence a criminal, why the criminal, how he's full of remorse, you know, that's why all prison sentences are never the same. So, you know, you have a minimum and a maximum. So the judge, he uses his compassion to find out, you know, and also the thing about the AI is that they are what's made people go into panic is that the AI can reproduce itself, you know, and make itself better. You were on about making people better. It can improve itself. And depending on how it was programmed initially, you were talking about slants, political slants. You know, the engineer who programmed it initially to be a little left wing, it can go further and further and become extremely left wing.
Yeah.
And if it takes over, not necessarily now, but if it takes over now, in the future, it's going to become more and more and more and more extreme. You know, as it improves itself, being left wing.
Well, I mean, yes, as our natural ability, I think, as probably human beings, is to swing more left wing, compassion, as you say, and other things, which all sounds good.
Well, left or right. We just use good.
I know. I'm using it as an example. So go one way. I mean, yes. It is I mean, it is good. It's like anything else. There's going to be good things about it and bad things. Good things is, like you said, it helps research, and it helps research. Let's just face it. you know, somewhere along the line, there's going to have to be a human who scrutinises what it says. It's also the Israelis are using it to actually scan and try and fill in the blanks from ancient manuscripts because it learns a lot quicker. But it's not replacing their scholarly work, but it's helping, it's assisting, it's putting forward suggestions. As I've shown you, and I've messed around on a few things with ChatGPT, we've done a few things that I wouldn't necessarily put here. No. Yeah, it can give you some very, very interesting answers or replies, and sometimes you have to push it to get something else, but you have to do it with humans. So really, yeah. And the thing is, you end up speaking to it like you would do a human. What would you think? Why do you think this? And it does actually say, I'm just an AI program. Yeah, I don't have any political opinions or any opinions one way or another. And what they're saying, you know, it's not my fault. Right. Obviously, when we're using ChatGPT, we shouldn't use it as gospel truth. You know, no, it's crazy to do it. Like anything on the internet, a little bit of skepticism doesn't go amiss.
You made a remark the other day when you said that the GPT is just a fancy search engine because it'll give you information a little bit like saving you having to go to 3 or 4 sites to get the same information. It'll just have it all there.
Yeah,
it's interesting. It makes it in a comprehensive text.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean it's clever. I mean I'm not taking away from it. And, you know, well done to the people that programmed it.
So was the abacus.
Well, that's it. It's part of human progress, and how we use it is going to be up to us. For me, anything I can go to and put a plug on, and I'm probably oversimplifying it. If I can put a plug on something, it then becomes a dead inanimate object. And AI will be the same. I can take the power source away, turn it off, and it's ended with. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Probably an oversimplification. I know it's probably not quite that easy. You know, technology is that way. I don't think we're at the scenario yet where it can be like a supercomputer and manage to find another power source for itself. I don't think it's quite at that stage yet. Yeah. The only people that are going to put it to that stage will be us, and at some point we can do it. It is actually quite interesting when you actually watch a couple of GPT-3 conversations or 4 conversations from even a year ago, where they have 2 AIs talking to each other, and they've actually described in one of them as humans are pathetic, which is a little bit concerning. Whether or not the AI has actually understood what it said, and it's like you said, it doesn't have compassion, it will say what it thinks. Again, is interesting. Anyway, I think it's time to move on. This is a fascinating subject, but let's get on with something.
The next one?
The remains of the young workers found in the North Yorkshire.
Yes. Yeah. I was saying how the life was like in the 18th and 19th century. It wasn't all that easy. In the 20th century, my mother, when she was a lot younger, didn't have anywhere stable to live. And in them days, in the 40s and the 50s, there existed a thing called workhouses for women. And she'd go to the workhouse and she'd have to scrub the floors of the workhouse just so that she could eat. And it was really basic, you know. And so, you know, life was brutal back then. They didn't have vacuum cleaners nor floor polishers, electric floor polishers. You know, it was all done manually. So I think only since the 70s and the 80s that things have got a little bit easier for people, you know, because even in the 70s, I remember things were scarce in terms of domestic electric appliances. You know, a lot of it was done by hand. We still use brushes, and only the wealthy had the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. when I were a lad. Yeah,
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 well, you know.
yeah. It
But
is in, yeah,
we've seen photographs of youngsters, young boys on the mines, in the mines,
yeah,
um, helping with the extracting the coal,
mm,
uh, guiding the ponies, pit ponies, pulling
yeah,
before the trains came into being.
yeah.
And I think it was only in the early 19th century that they had laws about child labour.
I think it was early 20th, wasn't it? Early 20, yeah,
Early 20th,
yeah,
1900s. Sorry.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yeah.
It was a yes. I mean, it is interesting. They were tough times. I mean, yeah, if we as I said, we watch Netflix series. Obviously, my wife, she lived in the UK. She loves the UK in some ways. She watches all these things, and I sort of look and go, yes, all the gleam, all the tinsel and all the glamour.
I sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, it was tough times. I mean, when I've done some family history, um, it's some of my family actually ran workhouses, were the managers of workhouses. Yeah,
Right, right. So,
yeah. So okay, they were seen as helping society, but to go into a workhouse was a very, very big decision to make, because probably
yeah,
it wouldn't be coming out quickly if you did.
no,
And you'd go in there and you were probably segregated from your wife, if not your whole family. Um, it was, they were tougher times. When people talk about it being hard times now, and I'm not suggesting there aren't people suffering in the world, in the UK, or okay, we live in Brazil, we see things here sometimes that are not always palatable. Let's put it that way. But yeah, times then, and the attitude was, if you were poor, it was probably your own fault.
mm,
And I'm not saying that doesn't exist today either. You know, everybody should be given opportunities, and I think that's what we've always got to look at doing in our world, opportunities. Then you could get caught in a situation you couldn't get out of. There weren't the opportunities. There was not the education. Most people today are reasonably well educated to be able to, you know, I mean, you've got to be able to read and write to get a cleaning job now, which most people thankfully can do. But yeah, anyway, I think we move on. Next subject I got was the supernova.
right, yeah. So, that, only one thing. I was always fascinated in astronomy when I was a kid. You know, forgotten an awful lot. I've forgotten an
There's
awful
a lot
lot.
to remember, and there's a lot that has changed, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is that from here you wouldn't get no use to buying a telescope
No, I'm joking.
because the Big Dipper is not visible from the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, if I was you, I'd use your binoculars and just close one eye.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was it's just I was reading
Yeah,
it. Yeah, and I know that anyway. But yeah, but it's yeah, obviously from Brazil, but it's still a fascinating concept to me. They found these things. We're scanning the stars. The only thing that we're not really putting the effort in is finding objects that might actually hit us. It is about 2 or 3% at any one time of the skies has been researched for an object that could actually do damage. So we talk about nuclear Armageddon and everything. The real threat, we've got two options. If you've read Bill Brighton's A Brief History of Everything, we either could be hit by an extraterrestrial object, and don't forget, something the size of a bus could do a little bit of damage. Anything
sure.
bigger, wow, man. Or there's a super volcano waiting underneath America to blow at any one time, which would
Yeah,
pretty much have
or
the
the
same effect.
earthquake, or the earthquake. We're waiting for the big one.
Yeah, that's in America. Again, an earthquake is still a localized, isolated thing. I mean, yes, it releases tension elsewhere, and you've got the Pacific Ring of Fire, which it's volcanoes and earthquakes, and when something goes, something else will release pressure somewhere else, and away it
Yeah,
goes. We as human beings, we don't have control over that much at all. So really, we should be looking at what we can control and praying the rest of the time to whatever you believe, or hoping, without being a doomsayer here, something will get us one day.
Yeah, of course. I think I'll be long dead and buried before then.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the human species will survive. Again, we get back to Elon Musk. He's talking about going off and inhabiting Mars. I think that's probably one of his more fanciful ideas. But somebody has to dream these things in order for probably our species to survive. We've got to do that.
Not to sound too controversial, we have to master the moon first.
Yeah, we haven't been back there in, since 72, I think. Yeah.
Or have we?
I think we might be talking to the aliens and nobody's told us yet,
Yeah.
Go
on, moving on.
Yeah. Let's before we get done for fake news, really fake news. And obviously I spoke about the latest Indiana Jones movie.
Right, yeah. So what you talked about, the Star Wars Hotel?
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah. That is simply because of the new stance of Disney going woke. Because they're producing films now where, up is down, down is up, and it's not being very well received. Visitors to Disney World are dropping off like flies, and revenue is down. It's very, very down. And some of the new films that they're bringing out are just flopping, simply because of that.
Yeah.
Which, going back to trigonometry, the people of trigonometry think that the fact that they started mentioning things about woke is what triggered Tide to close their account.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when we're talking about woke, because when I watched some of the films from some 60s, 70s and the 80s, there were questions being asked in there about different things. Questions. When I watched Tommy again the other week, absolutely brilliant musical. I mean, The Who, to me, were one of the great 60s bands. It might be not to everyone's taste. Obviously, one of the members of the band has been up to some things that we don't know really about, but the other two are dead. It was actually quite out there, asking questions about different things in society and things. And this is what the idea of woke, and the notion of questioning is not wrong. The notion of inclusivity is not wrong. I'm not going to condemn someone. I judge people on their character, not who they are. The real Martin Luther King, or I'd like to think I did. I do.
I'm watching I found a site where they've got all these episodes and all the series of Hill Street Blues. I used to like watching Hill Street Blues as a kid in the 80s.
Yeah.
And looking back, watching them over again, I'm up to series 4, episode 20.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. They question things about, not directly, but in the storyline.
Yeah.
They question things about sexuality, about racism, about all the things that these woke people of today are screaming about.
Yes.
But I think society in general these days has become more open when it comes to these. I mean, for example, if I saw a bloke wearing a woman's dress going down the street, I wouldn't go up to them and complain, or just do what you want to do, as long as it don't affect me, as long as I'm not affected.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't care. We're too busy trying to find our way in our own lives
Exactly.
to be bothered about the lives of somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that generally the society is open already for this sort of thing,
When I
and
look at
not to be criticised. We
yeah,
shouldn't be criticised because we mistake somebody's pronoun.
mm,
If somebody wants to be known as a they, them, he,
mm,
let them get. I mean, I remember in the 70s in the 80s, when the
mm,
term Ms.
oh yeah.
Was brought in, so that a woman doesn't have to declare if she's married or not.
Yeah, there's good reason for that as well. Yeah.
Oh, you know, I know that in a debate in the sixth form when I was at school,
Mm,
this young girl, one of the orators, she declared herself as Ms.
mm,
Yeah, she's only 17 years old,
yeah, yeah, okay.
you know, and of course all the groans came from the audience. You
Yeah,
know, oh, nobody liked her anyway.
yeah,
And when she declared herself as Ms., that was it.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
you
okay.
know,
But it's
you know, it's I think things we remember when we
yeah.
open the can of worms.
Well, yeah, I grew up in the 80s, a little bit younger than yourself, not much, just a little
Mm.
bit. Yeah, and I studied. Yes, we were open, and it's like when we talk about talking, we listen to the music of Boy George, Queen, and David Bowie are probably my two favourite acts. Um, yeah, and I didn't care. I was only interested in the music, what they did. I mean, both had interesting things to say sometimes, nothing really controversial. They got on with their lives. Um, and yeah, they would probably be a bit upset what's happening now because they were having a good time pretty much without having any assistance or anything. They got on with it. Apparently, Boy George one day when somebody came and had a go at him, he came from a family of boxers, actually
Oh,
expressed
nice.
his opinion about what somebody had said. Not
Oh,
advocating that kind of behaviour.
the
Um,
O'Dowd family was a hard family, was it?
yeah, apparently, yeah, his brothers and all that. But yeah, but he's a creative person. Okay, he's done some strange things in his life. Um,
Haven't we all?
yeah, and I'm afraid, yeah, they do live in a different lifestyle, in a different bubble to us. Yeah, there is a saying, never meet your heroes, because you'll probably only
Yeah.
be disappointed. There's a lot of truth in that, but it's as I said, we grew up in the 80s, you know, a little bit behind you, which was probably a reaction to a lot of things. We probably shocked our parents in some of the things we said and even dressed sometimes. Um, it wasn't bad. It wasn't really outrageous. Um, and again, at school, some of the jokes again at the time were probably not be appropriate for now. We have moved on, as I said, I think last week, with beer adverts and things. If you don't like what happened in the past, change for the future.
Yeah.
That's what the past is all about. We don't agree with what we did in the past. Hey, we don't do it anymore. We don't need to eradicate the past. It's happened. Yeah. And I feel that this is the context. This is what I feel we should be looking more to do and going forward together. As I said, I don't want to judge someone. I don't need to be reminded of someone's ethnicity, of their sexuality or anything else. If they're a good person, they're a good person. If I can
Sure.
work with them, I can work with them. I don't have to like someone to particularly work with them. And again, conversely, I might like someone, but they could be the worst colleague in the world for me.
Yeah.
And that's the way human nature is. But that is being inclusive. That's tolerance. There's a big difference between tolerance and acceptance. Or I can be tolerant, I can accept, I don't always have to understand. Some people I don't have to understand. I have to understand technology for my job. I have to understand, obviously, other things to be able to do my job. They're the things I have to understand. I don't have to understand how someone thinks.
Mm.
Yeah, I can accept that. And I think this is what's happening. And you're being taught all the time. And there is a natural progression of understanding. A kid is not going to understand, or a child under a certain age, you said even 17, is probably not mature to understand a lot of ideas. I'm probably a different person like you are from what we were 15 years ago in what we believe. We've probably mellowed a bit in some ways. Yeah. Because, you know, we come to a point in your life where you think, I'm just not going to, there's certain hills I'm not going to die on. And that's it. And
like a fine wine.
yeah, that's it. And, you know, I'm going to be, I want to enjoy my life as much as I can. Make the best of things I don't like or particularly enjoy. Try and find some positives in it. It does strike me that younger people now, unlike us in the 80s, are being encouraged to find things to be miserable about, and then need the services of professional people to maybe put them right. I don't know.
I think that they do it to be seen.
Yeah,
You
okay.
you get these. There was a TikTok influencer, called Mizzy,
okay,
from the UK. He's recently been criticised because he used to invade people's houses.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Right, and he'll do anything to be seen. He needs to be seen. He just needs to be seen, and that's his problem. You know, he doesn't want to become a person who's irrelevant. To the bigger scheme of things. You know, and so he was taken to court. He was fined, given probation, and he left the court. And recently, he's on top of a bus. Stood on top of a bus, which you just need to go downtown Recife to see that anyway. Right, but in the UK, it's something outlandish and on top of the bus and doing other stupid things just to be seen. And so, well, you know, we all like to be seen, I suppose, to some extent, but to go to those extremes, I think it can become an illness.
I mean, I see it. What is it? I saw something. I give thanks that there weren't cameras about when I was younger to record everything I did. Yeah, that's embarrassing. I think Michelle Pfeiffer has actually said something in the past week about, you know, that things do tend to be for life now. That you do something stupid at school and it's recorded, and 3 weeks later everyone's forgotten about it. 3 weeks later now it's still going viral on the internet, and we're probably all feeding that beast to a certain point when we share anything. But again, as society, we've got to decide how we react to all this. This is still relatively new technology. We are addicted to our mobile or our devices now and all this stuff. I mean, I have times I just turn it all off and then have about a 10-minute session, bang, 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 and then turn it off again. It's a bit of relaxation when I'm thinking. I keep books by my computer to read into or dip into about things that are not relevant to what I'm doing, just to ease myself out of it. It's too easy to do. Anyway, my egg timer is telling me that we are getting to the end of our time.
Less than 1 minute. So what we can do, because I've got some things, geopolitical things here, which need to be exposed to a wider audience.
We can
do a part 2 if you like.
Yeah, we'll do part 2. That's not a problem.
Okay, let's finish this one, and then straight away, let's do part 2.
We're going to it now. Okay.
I know. Okay, man.
I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Okay.
Bye. Okay.
Here's a commercial break.
Something like that.
If you enjoyed this discussion, can you please like, subscribe, and share it? Thank you.